have to use it once. Good evening. Welcome to the July 10th Select Board meeting. I'm John Martin, Francine Tishman and Jim Labrie to my left, Charlie Kanicki and Renee Groden to my right. We're being televised live as well as recorded for your viewing pleasure later on. If you can join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay. First order of business are several appointments. Number one is Megan Gentile to the Park Commission with a term to expire May 21st, 2019. And we kind of kidded Megan beforehand that she's going to have to come up and do a long speech, but we won't let her do that. But would you like to say anything, introduce yourself to the public at home? Yeah, why don't you just stand, you got to stand up there because that's where the microphone. Okay. Yeah, and just introduce yourself, where you live, and the people at home will be able to see you and why you'd want to be on the.
Where's the camera?
The camera is seeing you, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah,
hi, I'm Megan Gentile. I was a write-in in the last election for Park Commission, and it piqued my interest, and I went to the last meeting on July 10th, or June 10th maybe, and it really piqued my interest even more, so I'm excited to get going, and I don't know really much about it, but I'm excited to get going.
Oh, great, great. Thank you. Do we want to vote on these one at a time or all in the end?
Just do them all at the end.
All at the end's okay? Okay. Charlotte Axelm, is it? Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2020. Is Charlotte here? Yeah. Would you like to come up and? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Axelm. I recently applied to be on the Conservation Commission. I'm in the process of getting my master's degree in wetland hydrology and becoming a soil scientist, so I'm very passionate about conservation, and I look forward to doing something on a local scale.
Great. Where are you getting your degree?
UMass.
Good place.
I agree.
Thank you. No. Jonathan Hardy McAuliffe, Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2020. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, I am a forester, private consulting forester in Massachusetts, working mostly out of the Pioneer Valley, but a little bit in Vermont, New Hampshire. I graduated from UMass a few years ago, spent the last few years working for the first Forest Service in Idaho, and then for a private consulting firm in Forks, Washington, and figured I'd bring my skills back home to Massachusetts. So looking forward to working with the Conservation Commission here.
Sounds like you've got some great skills.
Hope so.
Appreciate you both joining. Marla, I'm sure you're looking forward to this.
I certainly am.
Christina Madsen, Historical Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2021. And then Ryan Gillher, Zoning Board of Appeals, term to expire June 30th, 2021. No?
You skipped one.
Did you miss one?
Miss Elsie
Jumped over one.
Bernier.
Bernier.
Which one did I miss?
Elsie Bernier.
Oh, I'm sorry. Elsie Bernier Feely, Historic Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2021. The last three are all reappointments. Elsie's, no? Okay, so can I have a motion to accept all the appointments?
I'll make a motion to approve the 6 appointments listed here.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous? And we have them here, I'm sure. They're right here. Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you all. We appreciate it. Thanks. That wasn't too bad, was it?
Wow.
Okay. We have a hearing, a poll hearing. Okay, we have a petition for a solely owned pole location. Select Board's holding a hearing tonight on it. It's a petition by Eversource, DBA Western Mass Electric, requesting permission to relocate and/or install poles, wires, cables, and fixtures including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public ways. Install one solely owned pole tagged 7/1M on the southwesterly side of College Highway, beginning approximately 143 feet easterly of existing pole 7/1. Reason to extend power to feed lot number 5. Anybody here from Eversource? Would you like to step up and introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Tyler Nelson Yaros. I'm the field engineer that designed the work to be done on College Highway. All commercial businesses trying to get a service in there. The poles existing, they already have there's not a lot of space on them. A couple are junction poles and some are reserved for the reclosing device there. So we need to install a brand new pole in order to put a 3-phase bank up there.
Now, where exactly is this pole on College Highway?
This is right across the street from the Big Y.
Where O'Reilly Auto Parts is going to be.
Correct.
Where Riley is? Okay.
Yeah, they're doing the site work now.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
So that
It
everybody
would be
knows
right
where
in
that
front of
is.
their property.
Okay, good. Is there any abutters that are here that have any questions, or, no? Okay. So we need to take a vote on this. Do we have a motion to accept this pole relocation?
I moved.
Okay, Charlie,
Either way.
I second.
oh, okay, Francine second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And there's 2 documents there that,
We need to give it to him while he's here?
no, but Janine is here to witness your
She's here to
signatures,
witness
so.
you. She's here to watch you, John.
It's, yeah.
We need all of us, huh? Both places, Charlie?
Like I got a busboy sitting behind me.
Hey, Ed, on these, it looks like it's just a signature place for them?
Yes.
Nope.
Not for us here?
Yeah.
So just leave them in the package?
You just leave them in the package.
Okay, while we're waiting for the last signatures, we have reports coming next. Selectmen first. Rini, would you like to start off?
Yeah, the Council of Aging did not meet in July. They'll have a meeting in August, but hot off the press, there was a meeting this morning. There is a event planned for September. The Council of Aging got a grant for an intergenerational event, and so on September 15th, which is a Saturday from 10 to 11, there'll be a walk for life is what it's called. And so the hope is that there'll be seniors and young kids and folks that will do a little walk around the town a mile. There's going to be a raffle and hopefully some healthy things to eat, that sort of thing. That's going to be September 15th on a Saturday morning. Community Preservation meets tomorrow, 5:30. Conservation Commission, I think pretty much the appointment of Charlotte and Jonathan. I don't know if there's anything else, Marley, you want me to mention, but that's pretty much it for now. And then John can talk about open space.
Okay, when we get down to it, old business, we want
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
just pick it up
to
after.
do it all at once, yeah. Charlie?
I met with the Board of Health. Things are normal, as is in town. We did a lot of discussion on the mosquito control district, and because it's on the agenda down below, I'd rather just break it up then.
Okay, anything else?
And, no, I've had department heads stop to talk to me about different things they have for ideas, and I've been directing them to Ed.
Okay, good. Thanks. Francine?
Yes, I attended the Finance Committee meeting last evening. We are up to four of the five positions on the Finance Committee are now filled. During the meeting, they caught up to date on all the PRFs and the PCFs, as well as the year-end transfers. They did look at the special town meeting warrant and made a decision not to make a recommendation one way or the other on Articles 1 through 3, which we'll get to later in the agenda. They considered that was not within their purview. And then on items 4 and 5, and we'll get to that as well, they voted in favor, and I'll repeat that again. They did not, because they didn't have all their members there, they did not make liaison assignments to other committees other than the community preservation, and that will be, the representative will be Jonathan Labrie. Is there anything you want to add? Covered it? Okay.
We didn't appoint chair or...
Right. Okay, yeah, what he mentioned is that they did not, because again, they didn't have full membership, they did not elect officers of the Finance Committee yet.
Okay.
Jonathan was acting chair last evening.
Jim?
The planning board meets next Wednesday, so I have nothing there. And the assessors met last night, and it was a conflict with our emergency board of selectmen meeting, so I was unable to go to that.
Okay. Town administrator report.
Just have a couple of items. First, the town clerk and treasurer collectors wanted to let me know that have me let you know that they are doing a change of hours for their offices and alternating Tuesday evenings. Instead of closing at 4 p.m. and reopening the offices at 6 p.m., the offices will remain open straight through until 6 p.m. on those Tuesdays. This will take effect for the new fiscal year, and that was tonight, July 10th, being the first Tuesday with the new hours. And they weren't getting anyone coming in before, so they thought that they would try this and see if they get some activity of people coming home from work.
Okay.
Other than that, I'll let you know that the mechanical contractor's been up on our roof a couple of times since the beginning of the fiscal year, trying to figure out the air conditioning issue in the front wing of Town Hall. And while they actually do have it working better and more efficiently, they still haven't resolved the issue of it not turning on automatically in the morning. So I'm still going up on the roof and throwing the switch to make that happen, but they're scheduled to come back tomorrow and see if they can diagnose the rest of the issue. There will be a department heads meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. here in Town Hall, and then I have union negotiations with the Highway Department union rep tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Okay. On to old business, 111 Glendale Road, right of first refusal. Rini, do you want to start off with going over what happened last meeting?
Sure. So there's been quite a few meetings, bless you, to discuss the fact that we were given the right of first refusal on 111 Glendale Road. It's 84.75 acres of land, and there's a land grant that's being applied for, which is $400,000, which we were told by Kestrel, who is assisting with the grant, that it's that we have a strong possibility of actually getting the grant. The difficulty with getting the grant is that we can't hold title to the property. So in order for us to be eligible, we will need to negotiate with the seller buyer for an extended deadline for closing. And so the latest that we heard was that they want to wait to see what happens at town meeting. So that's basically where it stands in terms of some of the activity. I think we already mentioned that we took a walk on the property. We have letters of support from the Water Department, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and not sure who else.
Assessors.
Assessors, yep.
Yeah.
And so, what else? We wanted to have a discussion with the select board about the possibility of using a local attorney with an expertise in land purchases. Appraisal was done. It was approved by community preservation for, I believe, $4,200. It only came in at $1,800. So that's good, and it was appraised at pretty much what we expected.
We got the appraisal today, yeah.
Yep. Okay, and that was
It came in at the price of $720.
$720, right? And so that has already been, or will be covered in this current fiscal year. And so we have a public hearing planned for next Tuesday where we'll have a PowerPoint and pending approval by the community preservation to put it in front of the voters at that meeting tomorrow. There will be a special town meeting on the 26th of July. And we're going to be looking at the articles, again, pending approval of the select board as well as the community preservation committee.
Thank you. Just go back on one of the items, the appraisal. We got the appraisal. Rini and I are on the ad hoc committee, and we were under the understanding that anybody could go to the CPC and ask for funding for a project. We later learned, because we're an ad hoc committee, we can't do that directly. We need to come back to the Board of Selectmen. So that's why it's on here. We haven't paid for it yet. We want to get the Board of Selectmen to approve us officially going to the CPC and getting the money to pay for the appraisal. And as Rini said, one appraisal came in at $4,200, and we got this one from FSI for $1,800. So it was quite a bit difference. So I guess I just want to take care of this issue. Can I get a motion that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the ad hoc committee to go to the CPC for funding for the appraisal for $1,800?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, okay. Discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
This alarmed me when I saw this happen.
Yep.
And I brought this to your attention.
You did?
The reason being, this board hears complaints from residents of boards moving forward with things without proper authority to do so.
Yep.
And that's why I raised this flag to you.
Yeah, rightfully so. That's why we're here to correct it. It's always better to find out rather than wait later on.
And there's been some confusion about community preservation, because I know historically in this town, the Finance Committee did not weigh in on community preservation, nor did it have to go in front of the Select Board for approval for certain things. So it was not an intentional sort of
Right.
bypass. It was, I think that the Finance Committee has recently chimed in on some community preservation articles. Prior to that, they never had, they basically passed over and didn't approve or support, and nor did it come in from the Select Board. So I think that's part of the misunderstanding.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, it's because it's an ad hoc committee rather than an
That's correct.
elected or appointed committee. And that's,
It isn't independent. It really goes and makes recommendations to the select board.
and if it was
The select board
independent,
makes the action.
Yep.
And when I saw that, it's basically alarmed me that, wait a minute, the train's leaving the station too fast here. You people need to reconsider where this is going. I'm not against what happened,
Yeah.
but I don't want to have you guys have letters against you to the Attorney General's office for doing things.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you bringing it up, because we wouldn't have known, and it could cause problems down the road.
Nope.
So, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So unanimous. Okay, thanks. Discussion of local attorney and funding. At the committee meeting, it was brought up about using a local attorney, and Rini, jump in anytime, using a local attorney who is familiar with the local area, who's familiar with the chapter lands, rather than using our attorney who is in Boston. And a lot of committees over time have used separate attorneys for specific reasons on an ad hoc basis. And the Open Space Committee felt that was worth bringing to the Select Board to discuss getting some funding for the local attorney. And amount-wise, is it $1,500?
Yeah, the entire amount that was, first of all, 2 attorneys were recommended that have an expertise in land acquisition. One of them is Attorney Spencer in Amherst, and one is Attorney Evans in Northampton. So I contacted both of them just to see what they would charge for a land purchase involving a right of first refusal. And so Attorney Evans in Northampton had sort of come through with a ballpark number of about $2,500. So the retainer would be around 1,500. So that's what we were initially looking for. Approval to be able to hire a local attorney, pending, of course, the approvals that need to happen on all of this. But it just seemed like it was pretty clear to the committee, meaning the Open Space Review Committee, that these attorneys, Kestrel, for example, has Attorney Spencer as their attorney, and Attorney Evans has, I think he's the attorney for the Franklin Land Trust.
Right.
So the idea is that they're local, they have this expertise, they understand right of first refusal chapter lands, and it seems as if they would have the expertise to negotiate the steps that need to happen.
And it won't cost any more than if we use KP law. It'd probably be a little less, actually. But it's all, any motion would have to be pending all the approvals that we get from
Right.
the town and everybody.
I just have a question. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, it would come from our legal fund, or I think, Ed, you had an idea, if I remember. I'm sorry.
It's listed on the transfers as from the reserve fund, am I correct?
But that's not, we talked about
Ed
that
wants
at
to say something.
open space, so yeah, Ed had a good idea.
Yeah, actually, if you look into the budget, if this moves forward through town meeting, gets approved, and we get the grant, the budget that was put forward actually has monies in it that would cover legal fees. So you don't have to look anywhere else except,
I think the idea of
Except that.
taking it from the reserve fund was when we were back in fiscal 18. We're saying, where can we get this money from? We don't have enough money in legal, but now we're in fiscal
And
19.
Kestrel had mentioned that it was important to have an attorney review the articles for the warrant, and that has already happened, I believe, correct?
I had sent Mark Walmsley
Right.
the drafts, and he had
Right.
looked at them and sent them along.
But that was
So
also part of the
Yeah.
idea that it had to happen sooner rather than later, but I don't think that that's still the case.
Yeah, KP Law reviewed the articles, correct?
Actually, they drafted them, and then I tweaked them.
Okay.
Okay,
May I ask a question?
absolutely.
Do we know what the hourly rates of these attorneys are?
We do. I think the one we're talking about was $175 an hour.
Okay, it's basically the same as KP Law. KP Law charges $180.
Yeah,
And the other one was 200.
yeah, yeah. It was more the local expertise with Kestrel and the, was it Franklin
Frank,
or Valley?
Spencer from Franklin.
Yeah.
Franklin is Evans, Kestrel
Yeah.
is Spencer.
So which attorney was this? You're going to hone in on what? The one
Attorney Evans, the one that
Attorney
was
Evans?
the lower figure, both of them recommended, but Kestrel's also helping to write the grant with the Open Space Review Committee, and Kestrel's attorney is Spencer, so we also thought it would be good to go with either one of them, so we went with Evans, who's not technically Kestrel's.
May I understand this correctly?
Sure.
You're asking for permission from the select board to be able to go into contract with an attorney on the premise that the funding is approved at town meeting?
Yeah, we wouldn't go into a contract to use the service until it was approved at town meeting.
All right, so do you need that vote tonight, or can that vote wait until after town meeting?
Well, we'd like to get it there so we know what we're doing, and the money won't be spent until it goes
I
through town meeting.
understand that.
Yeah.
I'm asking the
Yeah.
question just to be clear in my
Yep.
mind here, what you're asking for.
Because there's a tight time frame, we're trying to line the ducks up, so to speak.
I understand that.
Well, you asked the question, I'm just telling you why we're doing it now.
Well, keep in mind the right of first refusal, we received it in April around 10th or 12th. So in order to, 120 days
I
is
know.
around August 1st. The town meeting is the 26th. So I think that approval would be helpful pending, just because of the tight timeframe.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So you want a motion?
If there's no other conversation going into it, I'd like a motion.
I move to authorize the select board to designate the ad hoc committee to approach the community
Evans?
preservation for the $1,500 for legal
No,
fees.
no, no. We're not going to community preservation, we're taking out of our legal fee.
Legal fund.
No, you would be,
Oh.
you would be
Is-
utilizing Community
budget.
Preservation Fund if they give it. That's where the budget has been put together.
Okay,
for
so my fault.
Haley, yes.
Okay,
There is,
yeah, pending the
Well,
vote.
also is pending a vote with
Right.
community preservation.
yeah,
Can you,
yeah.
can you maybe rephrase it, just get it all in there?
Okay. Let's see, I move that that the select board authorize the ad hoc open space committee to request $1,500 in legal fees from community preservation.
I would not
No,
do the $1,500. I would just
All right.
say the legal
Legal
fees.
fees from community preservation dependent upon the outcome of the vote at the special town meeting. Does that cover it?
With a positive vote, or?
With a positive,
Yeah.
yes, outcome of a
That
positive.
covers it.
but, yeah, so then comes the question of who's gonna hire the
We need a
attorney.
second first.
I'll second it for
Okay,
discussion.
there you go.
Well, it should be the select board.
What?
Well, then we need that in
The
the
motion
motion.
made it sound like it was the ad hoc committee.
That's right, it needs to be in the motion.
She was saying the select board authorized the ad hoc committee to go to
Ad hoc committee.
CPC.
Yes, that's what I asked.
Right, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're gonna need another motion to authorize a contract agreement negotiated by the ad hoc committee
Right,
and approved by the Board of Selectmen.
right, but that's another motion.
That's what I said.
Okay, so let's get through this one. We have a first and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Please read the motion back.
Yeah, can we just review that motion, because I'm confused now. I had in here that you were authorizing the select board.
No, the select board is
Select
authorized.
board is authorizing the ad hoc committee to go into negotiations.
To go to the CPC
All right.
and
That's
request,
what Charlie said, and I was trying to fit in what she was saying
Okay.
two different ways. So, all right, let's try that again. All right, so the select board's gonna authorize the ad hoc committee to
Request legal
Go to the
fees, to
CPC.
approach the CPC to request legal fees.
request the legal fees.
for 111 Glendale Road
Right,
Yeah, that's all part of it.
upon approval at the town meeting.
That's
yes.
part I have, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I need your second cover that still?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it pertinent to the vote, Barb?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Because I think you may need access to legal fee for review of the, whatever the select board decides tonight for articles to put forward. And I think you may need to contact the attorney for advice on that.
For the articles? Those are already gone through
Written
KP
They're all
by our
done.
Law.
current attorney.
They are, but we don't know what the select board is going to decide.
Yeah.
Is it tonight or tomorrow night?
Tonight,
Right.
Tonight.
Yeah.
So you may change
We may change it, yeah.
the wording, so
Yeah,
if that happens,
it would make sense to go back to the people that wrote it.
Right.
yeah,
Town council is who we would deal with that.
okay, but
okay,
thanks.
just to make sure
No.
that you have the access that you need for questions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I just want to make a point. You were talking about Kestrel is putting a grant together to try to get $400,000. And Diana Fetterman sitting back there,
Yeah.
she put a heck of a lot of effort into helping Kestrel put the grant together. I read her summary, and it was quite elegant. I'll use that word, Diana, so thank you very much.
Yeah, great
Appreciate
job.
that. Of course, that may mean you're on everybody's list now when it comes to grants. so-
We need some
That'll teach you to
we
do
need-
such a good
we need
job.
bylaws person. It's a very wordsmithing job.
Okay, so now we have a letter from the Select Board in support of the grant for acquisition.
And it's worded not quite correctly.
I'll make a
because-
motion to assign John Martin to be able to sign the signature page for the grant application to the land grant for $400,000 from the state. Is that better?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so just understanding is we're going to change some of the wording here, and you authorize me to sign it once the wording is changed. Is that what you're saying?
What wording's changed?
No, it's just the
No, the
agenda is
grant-
worded incorrectly.
Oh, the
so,
agenda's
yeah.
wording it correctly. Okay,
No, no.
that's fine. So any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let me just...
And then there's also a document there that would authorize the town employees and volunteers of Marla Hank as conservation Commission Chair, Jennifer Day as Treasurer Collector, and Edward Gibson as Town Administrator to act upon this grant.
I read that. We have to vote on that?
Okay, so let me just quickly read it. It's short enough.
Okay.
As Chair of the Town of Southampton's Chief Executive Body, Board of Selectmen, and a duly authorized official, contract signatory authority, I delegate the Chair of the Town Conservation Commission, the Town Treasurer/Collector, and the Town Administrator to apply for and receive funding on behalf of the Town of Southampton. Following individuals are authorized to receive funds and implement the Southampton Glendale Road Land Grant, LAND, all in caps. Marla Hank, Conservation; Jennifer Day, Town Treasurer Collector; Edward Gibson, Town Administrator. You want a separate vote on that? Let's have a separate vote. Can I have a motion that I can sign this? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Before we go off this topic, I just want to say thank you to the Open Space Committee. There's been a lot of meetings, and a lot of things have to line up with a pretty tight time frame. And no one's putting the cart before the horse. The most important thing is what the voters of Southampton decide to do. And so I'm hoping that it gets to them, and wherever it lands, certainly we would support that.
Yes, I'll add a second to that. A lot of people show up at the meeting and really do a lot of work off to the side. Yes, sir. Is this in relation to this?
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. Just for a point of information, Southampton has worked with Attorney Dick Evans on several occasions. One of them was over 10 years ago when he orchestrated the Block family on Mountain Road, who gave 20 acres, and that was in Holyoke, that was in Easthampton, and it was in Southampton, and he managed to pull it off and protect it. So there is history with him.
Great, thanks. Okay, now, still under old business, July 17th, 6:05 PM, public hearing, right of refusal on 111 Glendale. That's going to be a special select board meeting to have that public hearing, and it's here, Ed, right?
Yes.
Okay, right here. So hopefully you people out there will show up and support this or not, depending on which way you want to go. New business, fiscal 18 budget to expenditures update. Vicki, I'm sure that's you. I'm positive.
So, I guess we are going to also go over after this the last round of budget transfers.
Right.
Which will cover any spending that we're currently processing potentially, and any negatives from payroll that we just processed for that last week of June. There isn't much money left in here once we get done with the transfers and accruals for any encumbrances that have come up, like from the school that has purchase orders, and accruals for salaries through the end of the year for them. But I did manage to find enough money in here to cover snow and ice, so.
So just a question, if I may. So I make
Yes.
sure I understood. On the expense report, it's a full fiscal year. All the funds that are going to still be in fiscal 18 have been encumbered and they show up in
No,
this?
they're not, no, they are not.
Okay.
Correct. Because we were gonna do these last transfers, then Joyce is in the process of gonna process that last cleanup warrant for FY 18. Now, if anyone comes to me in the next week or two and there's money left in the budget, I would have to encumber those funds. So they're not included in here, which, they're things invoices that get straggled, people don't send them in time, somehow they get missed, whatever. It's not a whole lot, but those will come in eventually. The revenue piece, the first 2 weeks of May are posted, and I'm gonna finish posting what Jen has entered, and then I will send that report out tomorrow. She's been working pretty diligently, trying to enter all those receipts from those last few months, meanwhile trying to learn parts of the job as she's going along. So we're getting there. So there's not going to be a whole lot of money left at the end of the year. I'm not quite sure what the revenue piece will look like in terms of if we've collected a ton more than we've actually budgeted for, that will fall into free cash, but we pretty much spent almost everything we have in our budget. So that being said, I am going to go over these transfers.
Just a thought,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
looking at the expense, full fiscal year, I guess I'll say I'm impressed that 98% or 99% of the budgets have not gone over budget. There's a few, obviously, and I'm not looking at the total dollars, but it looks like people have kept it within their budget for the vast majority of these.
Yes, they have, in terms of within their budget, you know,
Overall, yeah.
within their group of accounts potentially.
That's a good thing. People are
Yes.
looking at their budget and
Yep.
managing it, which is great.
Yep, the department heads do a pretty good job, so.
Kudos to all those folks.
Especially the bigger budgets like fire, police, and highway, you know, they have a lot of different expense accounts that they deal with and whatnot. Mine's pretty simple. My $865 really doesn't go very far, so I don't really have to do too much to throw some money in it. But anyway, so I sent an email to you guys earlier. Did you?
Which email?
Yes, I saw.
Board of Selectmen?
The transfers?
Yes. Do you have them? Okay.
I got mine, I don't know about the rest of them.
There was 2 tabs. One was regular and one was just for snow and ice.
And I had sent them
Right.
Yeah, we have.
information
Yeah.
from last night, too.
Oh, okay. All
One
right.
way or the other, I'm sure they have it.
Okay. So I'm going to start off with the one that says number 3 at the top, which are general. And most of these numbers are based on actual invoices that we have received. So the legal expense, we need $5,810.71, which is the May and June bills for KP Law. As previously, I try to take those from the same kind of group of accounts, but once you get down to the last bit of transfers, they kind of come from wherever there's money left over. That's going to come from communication wages from dispatch. Luckily enough for us, the chief is very good and diligent about sending in his E911 grant for dispatchers. And so I was able to transfer those funds that he's already spent to that grant, which frees up some communication wages where we can use them other places. One piece happens to be we're putting it into legal. Town hall building expense, which was on the first set of transfers. These are, those were estimates, and now that Ed has the final bills. This is the final bills for any work that we had done on the HVAC in those last few weeks when it was super hot and it wasn't quite working. Which is going to come from the town admin salary line item, which, as you know, Ed didn't start until January. Even though we budgeted the full $80,000 in there, there was money left over due to his, you know, coming in January instead of in November, I think, is when we were kind of anticipating.
And what happened yesterday and today, or today and tomorrow, will be obviously fiscal year 19.
Yep. Photocopier lease, as with the town hall building expense, that was a definite on May bill, but an estimate on June. But once we got the June bill, we needed another $120.14 for the 12 months worth of photocopier lease and paper that gets paid out of that account. That also will come from town admin salary. Selectmen expenses, $139.36, is going to pay for the ad for the generator that had to go into the newspaper. And we're going to take that from employment advertising. The employment advertising line was created a few years ago, so when people had to hire new employees, it didn't have to come out of their budget, it went into one line item. But since we didn't use that, but for one item, we were able to transfer that to selectmen to cover that newspaper advertisement for the bids for the new generator. General highway expenses, $4,500 will come from his general highway wages. He has some bills that were compliance testing, which was like $2,500. He had a few more Cintas bills for his uniforms for May and June, and I think there was a Verizon telephone bill and some mileage. And he was able to save some general highway wages when one of the employees resigned. We weren't sure what was going to happen with the override budget, so he didn't hire anyone, so he saved a little bit of money in his highway wages that he's going to use on those expenses. Building expenses, this is for the building inspector. He had some training that he went to that he is required by statute in order to do those classes every year to keep up with his commissioner's license. And that was for travel and mileage for that particular class, which is going to come out of his building inspector alternate, which he didn't use all of this year. He tried to do all the inspections before he went on vacation, or people didn't call until after he came back, so we didn't need the alternate as much this year as we did in previous years. The library is looking for $91.16 to come from their library maintenance expense into the regular expenses. They needed to buy new barcodes for all the books, and they were a little bit more than she actually had left in her expenses for this year. Veterans benefits, I think I spoke about this last time we did these. We had some new people join, that were approved to get veterans benefits, and we added them, I think, in April. So these are the 3 months that wasn't budgeted for because we didn't anticipate coming up. The good thing about that is we will receive 75% of that next year for veterans benefits on our cherry sheet. Which is also going to come from communication wages. Again, we were able to move about $18,000 from the general fund budget to the grant, which frees up some money to use in other places. Veteran agent expenses. I spelled expenses wrong here. Can't type. $169.64 was the balance for the Purple Heart signs that we approved and put up on Route 10 and a few other places in town. Which will come from employment advertising. As I said earlier, we didn't really use that line item up at all. Group health insurance, the last time we moved $36,000 over, which was an average of the past 11 months, but it turns out that this last month was a little bit more than just the average. So we need $1,657.99 for our employer portion of the group health insurance. And so we didn't need as much money in technology equipment or technology services for the end of the year. We didn't have any more bills for Northeast IT or anything, so we were able to take that out of those, along with the leftover money in election registration expenses. Those 3 categories will equal the group health insurance, and the Medicare was off. We pay 50% of the Medicare, which was a little bit more than originally in the budget. Treasurer collector wages is off $101.40. The beginning of last year in July, we had one clerk leave. We paid her for her vacation, and then we had another clerk come on, so there was a week of doubling up on payment for the clerk, which is going to come from the treasurer collector salary line item due to the previous treasurer collector leaving, and then the interim coming in, and there was a few weeks that we weren't paying anyone in that particular position. Police overtime wages, $11,799.64, will come from police wages. Basically, when we try to budget the police overtime, we try to split it as close to overtime as possible, but not knowing who's going to be on medical, how many part-timers we're going to have, who's going to fill what shifts. A lot of investigations Mike had this year that kind of played into that, but that money is budgeted in wages. We're just transferring it to the overtime piece. Fire department wages and EMT wages are the same sort of split. The last time we did exactly what was in the budget, and these are for the last month of June. He had more fire calls that were charged than EMT calls, so that is covering that. Excuse me. Ambulance maintenance, luckily enough, he only had $560 worth of ambulance maintenance this year as opposed to last year, which will come out of his EMS expenses. Then the last piece on here was the $1,500 for the legal for the retainer, but, you know, I put this on here not knowing the piece of the CPC and that legal piece was rolled into those funds, so we can kind of take that right off of
So
here.
just roll back into the,
Yeah, it won't just be used, it'll just roll back into,
Free cash.
into free cash eventually, yeah. So I added it here just for purposes of discussion, but since
so
you
you'll
guys
take
already
that off.
resolved it, I'll just take it right off.
Okay. So we need a motion for this? And if
Make a
we-
motion to
if-
approve all the line item transfers,
Except the open space.
Yeah, except
except the
the,
open space
Yeah.
one.
okay. Here a second?
Second.
Discussion on this?
I have a couple of questions, but they're not directly related to transfers. I think they all make sense. The EMS expense, is that specific to the fire department, right? That's not a emergency management
Correct.
expense, right?
There is no emergency management.
Right, that's what I thought, that's why I was asking. Two other questions, they're a little bit off topic, but I'll just ask them, and if you want to prove this first, and then I'll ask. So the Medicare and the insurance is off by, what, $7,000, something like that?
Right, seven-
Yep.
Is that an issue as far as FY19? Is that a problem, as far as where we are budgeted for FY19?
I believe that we should be okay for FY19. What happened last year was I think we came up with the budget plan, and in April, we had already kind of went through our budget. The insurance trust will come through and say, oh, we're going to increase your rates. And they increased them dramatically last year, you know, in 17 to 18. So we had already set the budget before those rates had increased. And we hadn't seen an increase in rates like that for 5 or 6 years because they were trying to kind of keep them too low. So that's kind of what happened last year. Plus, open enrollment was April. So if new people came on or new people switched policies from an HMO to a PPO or people switched from single to family, you know, Donna, when she did the budget, kind of took what we spent, put 1 or 2 more people in if they added, and then try to do it at the higher rate. But if you have more people at the higher rate than you think are going to be in there, that's kind of
It's a
what
bit of a
happens.
moving target every
Yeah,
year.
it is, and for the most part, it's a pretty good guesstimate, but with that increase unanticipated, higher than we originally thought, I think that's kind of where that came to play,
So
so.
if you look at our total group health insurance, it's not here. I mean, $1,600 is pretty much on the mark. I mean, we spend so much on health insurance, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
A
we
variance that small.
originally budgeted $881,000, but we're paying $918,000. So, that's, you know, that's quite a bit more.
37,000.
And I know, like, personally, I have, you know, HMO family, and it went up, you know, whatever, 10 or 15 bucks a pay period, or whatever that might be. So, and that's just my portion. And if the town's paying the bigger portion,
Quite a bit.
it's quite a
The other
bit.
question I have is, Ed, on the, you mentioned about the notice in the Gazette about the generator. Did we get approval to delay that payment, or?
We have not yet, no. I have an idea, it's hanging up with the fact that they have not completed their fiscal year 19 budget process yet.
Okay, thanks, Vicki.
I'm not quite sure.
We got approval for a grant for the
Yeah, we
generator.
got the money. I have all that.
That just reminded me of, yeah, it was just a question of whether or not we could just delay, that if we could still receive it or something.
Well,
I mean, we got the money.
Well, we got the money, but we were supposed to have spent it by June 30th.
Yeah, okay, that's what we're asking.
So we've asked permission to extend that deadline.
Oh, that would have been nice.
Yeah. Extend it to spend it.
They're not gonna ask for the money.
Yeah, the
Okay.
Okay.
famous last words.
Any more questions, Rini?
What money?
All right, that would have
Vicki,
been helpful.
Other questions?
Yeah, that total you gave of 800 and some thousand for group health, did that include the Medicare for the year, or is that just?
No,
group
that's
health?
just group health. Medicare was 90 some odd, it was 90, $92,639.
So we're looking at
That group health was active and retired?
8,
That was just active. Retirees are 184,995, so 185,000
We
bucks.
spend $1 million on
it's a million, yep.
Yep.
big chunk. Any
Yeah,
other
it
questions
is.
on this?
No questions.
Okay, so we have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Vicki?
Okay, so the next one is for winter roads, snow and ice. I did that separate. And it's kind of a jumble of a whole bunch of different accounts, whatever was left over that I could peel off to cover that. So luckily enough, we don't have to, like I said, we won't have much in free cash, but at least we got this covered and we won't have to put it on our tax recap in the fall. We had some money left over in postage. Randall did have money left in his road machinery and maintenance, which are basically parts. He buys parts and equipment. There was some savings in there, $8,500. Principal assessor, due to the nature of how that office only ended up with one person through the end of the fiscal year, we saved $17,601.10 in there. Police wages, there was some, again, there was a little bit of money left in police wages. 450116, communication wages, again, there's that $18,000, plus a little was underspent for communication wages through the end of the year. General highway, yeah.
Do you know why the communication wages were so much under budget?
Well, part of it is there was $18,307 I transferred out of there into the grant.
Right.
And then there was a little bit that was underspent because it's based on how much overtime, people, vacations. You have new people coming on, you don't have those people needing as much vacation as the older people. It's kind of.
Because there's a 24/7 position.
Yep, it is, yep.
Yeah. So, okay.
General highway wages, again, that was from that one individual who had resigned, and Randall was able to save some of that money. Library wages, $1,782.59. Part of that has to do with the custodian. We budget for 7 hours per pay period for the custodian, and since the custodian left in April, you had 2.5 months worth of savings for custodian, plus if people weren't on vacation, they didn't use their substitute money, that kind of thing. Town clerk assistant wages, $760.82. Telephone, $566.97. EMD expenses, $417.41. Local school transportation. Originally, we had taken $17,000. We were supposed to take $17,100 to pay for vocational transportation, but I had to take some of that back, partially because when I calculated how much we would need for that one student to go to Westfield Voc, I did 180 days times 95, but then not remembering that student didn't start till October, so we didn't need all the rest of that money because we had 2 months worth of bills that we didn't pay because we didn't start paying for the bus until like October. Okay. So we were able to capture this and use it for winter roads and winter expenses. School choice tuition. So the state, when they send us our cherry sheet every year, gives us all of our revenues. Here's the money you get. Here's your state assessments. They assessed us quite a bit for school choice tuition. But when we put the budget together, but they did not actually charge us for all that school choice tuition. So there was a little bit of money, well, not a little bit, quite a bit of money left over that I was able to apply to winter roads and winter wages and expenses. Now, I went through and calculated net school spending because that plays into the net school spending piece. And even with taking this out, we were still over about 25 or 30 grand in net school spending. So it was a safe choice to move it here. Election registration expenses and wages, those were also not used for this fiscal year. So that equals the whole 82 to 3340.
So we dodged that bullet.
Yes, we did.
Good job. Good job to everybody out there have the surplus in their accounts.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have the assessor money next year for sure. You probably won't have highway wages for next year. You'll still have some communication wages because we get about $18,000 every year for that grant, so that's a pretty good chunk of money. School choice tuition, they assessed us What did they assess
Now we
us?
don't know from year to year.
We don't know, and one year they assessed us 30 grand, but we got charged 75, so it all depends on who decides to go out of district to do school of choice, so.
Maybe we won't have the winter we had last winter.
Yeah. It wasn't so much snow, it was just the roads needed to be treated, and salt and sand get expensive. As much as we contract through, the state contract, it still gets expensive, so.
I'll make a motion to approve these line item transfers, total 82,233.40.
We hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I just have one question. When it comes to net school spending, is there anything else other than the operational budget for the school that counts towards net school spending?
Yeah, there's an indirect cost piece that's associated with it, which would be, there's all the certain calculation formulas that the state requires you to calculate. There's a library component, there is the insurance component of all the teachers and all the retirees for the teachers, insurance that we would pay is part of that. Also, the administrative costs, they have a formula per pupil times whatever the administrative cost is on their website. Any maintenance, upkeep, so anytime Randall mows, when he has RGM plow, that gets, part of that indirect cost gets calculated to that. So when you calculate it, you include that indirect cost piece when you do the whole piece, so.
Some of the highway department, obviously, budget involves snow removal and mowing of the fields. Plus, they had a couple of capital expenses.
Capital expenses don't count.
Boilers and the library.
They don't
rugs, so
count.
they don't count.
They
at all,
don't count
even
towards
though they're
net school
maintenance.
spending. No, it's because it's a capital expense. I double checked last year because we had, what did we have last year?
Roof.
No, it wasn't the roof, it was the telephone system. It was $24,000 for the telephone system and I just double checked with the Department of Education and it doesn't count towards net school spending.
The door system, the door locking system was another one.
Yep, yep.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
pieces to
yeah,
this.
that was when they would walk by and the doors would just automatically open.
Yeah.
So yeah, those cannot be counted towards net school spending. That's why when there's vocational tuition left over, that's included in that school spending for Norris, and that has to get transferred to the school so that we don't miss that, because you get penalized if you don't, they charge you interest and penalties and all that if you don't meet it, so. And if you, whatever the amount is, you don't meet it the next year, you have to give that to the school, so. You're better off giving them the money in the year you have it than next year giving them what they need plus more, so.
Any more questions for Vicki? Thank you, very good.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, next item is a citizen petition for Gun Road extension to classify as a school zone, add a light at curve, and add slow deaf child sign. It's short, so I'll read the whole thing. It's made out to Mr. Gibson. We, the undersigned, are requesting that the town do the following for our street. 1, classify Gun Road extension as a school zone. 2, post a speed limit accordingly. 3, add a light at the curve in the road. We are requesting this due to the high rate of speed on this road at all hours of the day, especially when school is in session. Additionally, over the years, we have had multiple accidents where mailboxes were destroyed by cars speeding, cars crashing into neighbors' trees when the driver lost control, speeding, and lady rolling SUV when she lost control at the corner, speeding. It's signed by, I'm going to say, a good dozen people. None of the names can I clearly read, so I'm going to assume they're all on that area.
15 people.
15, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming, Ed, the best we can do at this point is to ask Randall to take a look at this, or is there something more?
No, what I would respectfully ask the select board to do is authorize me to work with both our highway superintendent Randall and police chief Mike Goyette to take a look at that. There are some very specific criteria for school zones. I don't think the entire Gun Road extension would qualify for that, but there are a number of other things we may be able to do. Chief Goyette had put the radar sign out there for a brief period right after we received the petition. However, that new mobile radar sign requires a pole, and when I say a pole, to put it on much like a sign pole rather than a telephone pole, and there's not very many of them. So it got mounted on one of the no parking signs very close to the stop sign on Pomeroy Meadow Road, which, you know.
Already slowing down.
Right, so what I did was I asked Randall if he had any spare posts hanging around. So Randall's gonna take a look at a couple of places where we can actually put the posts in temporarily so that the chief can mount that radar sign in some different spots that we'll get a better read out of as far as that goes, and we'll get some better data.
The older one that's pulled on a trailer isn't in use anymore?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I don't think it had quite the capabilities of the new one.
Right, yeah.
Yes, you know, so being able to get all that feedback of how many cars, miles per hour, the times, everything else is invaluable for something like this.
Yeah, do you know if there's a street sign or a speed limit sign and also a school zone sign anywhere on the road there?
There's not a school zone sign. Like I say, there's certain criteria to school zone. We may be required to put a flashing light up if it is a school zone. To do a speed limit sign, you actually have to do a speed study, and that comes in, I forget if it's at the 80th or 81st percentile, so you can actually theoretically go to do a speed study and say, oh, you know, we're gonna lower the speed zone, and, you know, in this particular area, and you come back and the data tells you that if to get the state to approve it, you'll be higher than what you actually would like. There are some other crafty ways of going about that might get to the message, but really aren't totally legal as far as enforcement.
So we're not going to talk about that here.
You know, if you ever travel around and see, not the ones that say speed limit and are white, but if you ever see the yellow signs that say like 30 or 25 and they say MPH,
Yeah.
those are advisory. They will get the message out. Sometimes people might obey them, but you can't write a ticket on them and whatever. And then,
Still waiting for this study on College Highway?
yes, yeah. And then some of the other things is we might be able to do some markings where Gun Road extension goes down towards College Highway, and what I will call, I won't even call them the curve, I will call them more like an S's and whatever. So we've got some ideas, but if you would authorize us to work together, we'll come back with some ideas for you.
So can we get a motion to authorize Ed to work with the police chief and the highway superintendent to review this information and come back with some recommendations?
So moved.
Wait a second, and we'll discuss?
I'll second it.
Okay, go ahead.
Why does he need our authorization? He's already,
He's asking us for it, so
but I would assume he already has that authority.
he does, because they directly
I'm
report to
polite.
him, but I think he wants the full power of the board behind him,
Wants the
Charlie.
full- All right.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks.
All right.
Okay, next is open space and recreation plan. What is that about there?
Well, we have a current open space plan which expires next year? Middle of next year, and in order to be eligible for various grants, we have to have an open space plan, and the one that we have is, 5 or 7 years?
Yeah, 7-year, you're running out and
Yeah.
take a long time to do. So since
Marla, would you mind just getting up and explaining who did the previous plan and what it entails? I know, but you know more about it than most of the people in the room at the moment.
In 2012, Courtney Half, who happened to have been just coincidentally a member of the Conservation Commission, was hired to do the open space plan. It's an update of the one from 2005, which Ann Wellington had done, which was an update of the one from 1998. You see the pattern here. So since they take a number of public meetings, they take doing maps and getting people with the software to do that, one would start now.
Okay. Now, are you saying conservation did it in the
No,
past?
I'm
or-
not saying conservation did it.
No?
the person who did it happened to do that sort of thing for a living. By chance, he was on the Conservation Commission, which is how I know about it.
Okay.
But
So we have to decide who the appropriate person or
Right.
people are.
What does it cost, do you know, to do an open space plan? Do you have an idea?
in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. Pioneer Valley Planning Position, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, PVPC, you can hire them to do it, but you can also apply to them for a grant. Theirs are not on the fiscal year, though, they're on the calendar year. So at the end of this year, or starting soon, you could apply for money, and then they would use that to do part of it for you. Sometimes they'd fund the whole thing, sometimes not, depending on your grant. And they suggested, no matter what, you get a group to start on what are your priorities, so you can do a lot of the legwork yourself before you get to that. You had asked me to ask our conservation agent, as part of her last 5 hours, to come up with a list of people. And when we got that information, it was to use her for 5 hours. There was 2 weeks left of the fiscal year. One of those weeks, she was in Oregon, as I had mentioned last time. And then, so she came back, she was working on it, but then the week she was working on it, the city planner of Easthampton was on vacation. I don't know where. But he asked her to hold off giving us the report for what we had asked her to look up till he had a chance to go over it with her. So that is presumably this week.
Okay.
So I don't have the list. The whole point is that we as a community need to start looking into doing it long before the end of this calendar year.
Would you say it's fair that if we start with the PVPC, as far as inquiring and asking some parameters from them, that would be the place to start?
Yes, and I actually did have a sample of what the questions and the types of considerations from one of their clients. They just blacked out the name, so to speak, so.
Okay, so you
to do
have that?
Yes, in my pocket, I do not, but yes, I do.
Okay, is that something you could give a copy to Ed?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great.
So every town has to have it if they're applying for any kind of grants. So
Yes.
what do other towns do? They hire PVPC?
Often, was when I asked different people what they did, the first thing they said was PVPC. Northampton has their own staff who did it. They went to PVPC for the master plan, which was that much bigger, but they did their own. But most people, the first thing they say is Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Yeah.
But we have not in the past. We had other private individuals do it.
Okay, so you'll get the information though from Mallory, right?
I will when her boss says it's ready to go, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
And you will be the second person to have it.
Okay, good, can't wait.
Can-
So, can we just put that on a future agenda then, you think?
We can, but I wonder if we should have a motion to authorize Ed to go reach out to PVPC and maybe Easthampton and some other towns to kind of do a little research on this as time allows.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, including yourself, Ed? Or
That was authorizing Ted, right?
Ed?
Ted?
Ed.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, what's your experience with like Beckett and other towns in terms of this open space plan?
Probably have more experience in West Springfield. We utilized a firm other than PVPC, but spent a lot of money on it. So I would start with PVC for a community this size and see what they have to offer.
Okay, so any discussion on that, any more? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
Action item.
Members calendar coordination / upcoming meetings. Was that you, Francine? No? The next item? Members calendars coordination / upcoming meetings?
Yeah, I had proposed a schedule whereby the major committees in the town would be making more regular reports to the select board and hence to the public, so that everybody was kept apprised of what was going on in some of the individual committees. Maybe it was a little ambitious. I had some, scheduled monthly, some bi-monthly, quarterly, based on the committee itself. But I really felt that this would serve two purposes. It would inform, three purposes, actually. It would inform the select board, it would inform the public, and if we grouped the reports together of specific committees, it would inform those related committees if we had them report at the same meeting. For instance, fire, ambulance, police, and highway would be one group where I thought they would, together would make sense. I thought that, as far as the finance committee and the treasurer collector and major department heads coming together once, whatever frequency we decide, would be making some reports that would keep that group in front of us. Another group, collective, would be community preservation, historical conservation. That made sense to me, and including greenway and open space. So I was looking at how we could kind of, communicate up and across at the same time and keep the public informed. So I sent it out to everyone. I haven't had any feedback other than the fact that it probably was a little overly ambitious in terms of the frequency of the meetings. Not the intent to make these meetings longer, but the purpose really was to get more information out among all of us, because we don't all attend. I mean, we're liaisons to specific committees, but it's nothing, as far as my experience on finance, it's not the same as having the committee itself report, as opposed to hearing what the liaison has to say and what we picked up as being important. So it would just keep everything kind of front and center. And it would be a moving conversation from update to update. And that way, I was hoping that some items wouldn't kind of fall off the page just simply because, these agendas are long enough. And it may not always make it here, but that group is still working on that particular issue. And I think, keeping everybody informed of their progress would be important. So that was my intention.
I mean, I like the groupings. Those were, the synergies were there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just a frequency we can adjust. But what do the rest of you think?
I thought it was really helpful when the police chief came and fire chief and highway department came and talked about like a status update on the department. It was very informative. That's not something we would necessarily get, especially since these are departments that report to Ed as opposed to committees that we're liaisons to. So I think in theory, I think it's a great idea. I think it's good for the public to hear and for us. Mm-hmm. Again, what's a reasonable frequency given the frequency of our meetings? And, I guess it's open to debate, but I think it's a good idea in theory.
Yeah.
And I do think it encourages more, I'm going to say, coordination between different departments. I think water, health, transfer station makes sense together. Assessors, planning, and zoning committees all make sense. Mm-hmm. Because they may be doing different things, but perhaps on the same issue. Mm-hmm. And I just think that facilitates communication, hopefully a better outcome.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, different iterations, though, we have asked to have the major department heads in on a regular basis, and that started, but it seems that we started, we drop it, we started, so we should be more formalized on this.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be condensing it into, so you have groups coming in instead of all the individual department heads?
Right.
Yeah. What do you think about doing it every quarter?
But in order to do it every quarter, we'd have to schedule monthly in order to get through it. Okay, so one a month.
Right, but then they'd hit every quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Does that sound reasonable to?
Yeah.
So Ed, can we do that? Schedule them, and like Francine grouped them? And we have no power in most cases to get them here. We have to ask them because they're elected committees, but, explain what we're looking for, and it could be a good, dialogue between us and them. And maybe we can publish a schedule for a full year and that way everybody will know how to plan. And if they want to hold their meeting during that time, then maybe that'll work too. So if you don't mind doing that, Ed, and getting back to us,
Certainly.
thank you.
And I don't know, Ed, if you have any guidelines, I mean, I could just see a department or committee asking, well, what do they want to hear about? If you have any guidelines, I'm not sure, I don't know if you're looking for budgetary information or activity updates or any, I mean, I think it might be helpful to have some guidelines.
I think it depends on the committee too.
Yeah.
Planning is not necessarily going to give us a financial update, but maybe what's on their agenda, what they see. Jim's on that, so. Okay, good. Thanks, Francine. Okay, discussion, joining mosquito control district. Charlie?
I wanted to put this on the agenda so it didn't just fade away in the background. Last couple of years, I worked with a number of different communities to establish a mosquito control district in this region because the Pioneer Valley actually has no disease surveillance in this regard. It was going forward at town meeting. We took it off because of their budget situation. Ironically, they were awarded a grant and there is no expenses this year for their operation. But that's hindsight now to go and look at it and say, well, we should have just kept on going on course. This to me is no different than us belonging to the Barnes Aquifer Committee and other committees like that where they provide us some support in some realm that we need to keep an eye on. I met with the Board of Health last week. They would like to see this move forward again. Like I said, this is just a topic at this point to see what we want to do. But I'd like to keep this idea fresh and alive as we go through our budget for the coming year.
What's the cost for a year?
Somewhere around $7,000.
I thought it was 5,000 in the original budget.
I know, but the point is going to be it's going to change again. So I'm anticipating. I'm trying to be as candid as I can with that, Rainey, and I think what's going to happen is there are more communities enrolling now.
Yeah.
That's going to bring the cost down in one regard, but it's going to increase the cost in the fact that people are going to be looking for services. One of the nice things about this, it's an a la carte type situation. It's called a mosquito control district, but the first priority is disease surveillance.
Right.
If you were going to have the Cadillac of it, that would mean that they're actually coming into town and doing larviciding and education programs and stuff like that. I don't honestly believe we have the funding to do something like that. But it would be nice to be a designated area so that sampling can be taken so we know if we're having an increase in West Nile, Triple E, Zika, and now with their introduction of the tiger mosquito in Connecticut, that's going to bring in other zoonotic diseases.
Plus, they did identify additional areas of West Nile, I believe, right, in the latest
Yeah. So
mapping.
So your goal is to keep this in front of the board, so as we go forward with fiscal '20 to put it in the budget?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm not looking for
So
any,
not for now?
no. I mean, it would be nice to take and put it at potential town meeting, vote for it and everything else, but from a purely practical point of view, I don't want to put us in a position of committing ourselves to spending money next year without knowing what next year's budget's going to look like.
There's no DPH funding for this?
There hasn't been DPH funding since I worked for DPH doing it. And
How about any
that's-
grant funding?
Just had to ask.
That grant you said,
Yeah, the grant we missed out on last time, is it something that's annual?
No.
Yeah.
That was a one-time encouragement by the Commonwealth to try to get this up and running. In fact, I had to be part of the team that went in front of the Department of Agriculture to lobby to create a legal district. So this district didn't exist 2 years ago. It now is an actual legal district that functions. But, you know,
okay.
I'm
Okay.
just trying to keep it, the heartbeat going, that's all.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and see if we can't work it in.
Yes, sir?
My memory is to join a mosquito control district, it's a 5-year commitment that you're tied into?
My understanding, if memory serves, is it was 2 years at the beginning.
Okay.
I never, because we pulled it out of our budget, I didn't follow up to see where the final contracts landed, no pun intended. But but I believe it was heading to a 2-year commitment.
So that's something we can find out before we get into the
Well, we
budget
can,
process.
I have access to all of that. I just want to, at this point in time, make sure it just doesn't disappear, because
Yeah.
there's no advocate in town pushing this, but it's a necessary tool that needs to be out there.
Okay.
And besides, we have all these park activities, we have all these school activities,
Yep.
you know, and as you saw from last week's weather,
Yeah.
we have the perfect environment to raise mosquitoes here.
Yep. Okay, we'll do that, keep it up on the back burner. Thank you. Conservation agent funding, who
I
owns-
did.
You own that? Go ahead.
I own that one too. I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but we have a conservation commission that oversees some 600 acres of property in this town. And one of the problems with that committee, or issues, is the fact that they're all volunteer, they have no budget, and they have no staff. We made a good faith effort this year to try to create a position, and that got cut out of our budget. This is another issue that I believe we need to put on as a line item for next year's budget, with the understanding that we need to recognize the fact that even right now, we're talking about another 80 acres of land. We need some staff to be available to help them manage some of this. And as we grow, we need to address that.
Okay, so
So,
we'll put it on as another placeholder.
Do you have an estimate on what that costs?
It was 10,000 if we did the joint.
yeah,
I don't know if that's still be possible next year.
yeah, I don't have a dollar amount, Jim, but if you
Okay.
want a best guess, 10 grand, 15 grand, just to get something going, if we can just get 8 hours a week. If we get something going, because right now we have nothing. I don't mean Marla's sitting there staring at me, but I'm basically championing the fact that we recognize that with 600 acres of land and all the other applications of grants and programs and everything else, it's difficult to expect volunteers to do all that.
Since I didn't know why that was on the agenda, I'm not here prepared, and I never want to do this anyway. But I want to make it clear, some people had the misunderstanding that it was an administrative position. It is not. It's a technical person who knows, where the grants are technically. We have so many issues trying to deal with a barn, trying to deal with trail maintenance, trying to deal with bridges, trying to make sure we're doing the legal things, as opposed to just tell everybody, put up a silt fence and you're done. That's not acceptable. We have a lot of water in Southampton, and someone who, as for a career, knows and has the training, who can be there. I learned a lot from Mallory in the short amount of time we had her, but not everybody is retired and can spend that amount of time either. So it would be really helpful to have the technical staff. And one of the reasons she's also busy right now, because the chair of the Hinsdale Conservation Commission passed away, and that person also was the chair of the Hinsdale Selectboard. So Mallory was busy working while she was on vacation in Oregon, trying to do the legal stuff. It's a legal issue that we have. It's state law that needs to be addressed,
As
not
we-
to mention property maintenance.
I definitely support the idea of having a conservation agent. I'm not entirely sure that it went as well, the process went as well as it could have. And in terms of Easthampton and then taking the money back before the end of the fiscal year, and the relationship with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission in terms of writing the grant. But there was no question in my mind that I felt I went as far as I possibly could to support that position when we were direly cutting money from the budget, and we didn't even know if we would have an override yet. So I think it's definitely worth keeping it on the agenda. It's a very hard-working committee. I'm just impressed with the amount of field work they do, and I'm thrilled that they now have 3 more people with tremendous expertise on the commission. but it's still a lot of work. It's just that there's no way we could have, transferred a position that was a grant to an operating budget where we were at the time.
Yeah, we can look at our fiscal 19 budget in the first few months as we go, and if we see any money that we can move around, we can start talking about these other things again.
Let me also add, not only would it be extremely helpful to have a conservation agent, but any budget whatsoever. We used to have a budget of a couple $1,000. 4 years ago, it was cut to $750, and the last 3 years, it was cut to $0. It's really hard to do anything with zero.
We should look, as we go along the first couple of months. Because as we see at the end of the year, we have some money we can move, so let's move it maybe a little earlier if we can.
Would it be okay to put that on the agenda for?
Yeah, if you want to keep it on old business,
Yeah.
that's fine. I mean, both of the mosquito and the conservation agent, we can put on old business, just to leave it there so to remind us. Yeah, good idea. Training town administrator and department heads in ICS 100 as EMD sees a need. Is that you, Charlie?
That's me again.
Okay.
Last year, you appointed me as the emergency management director for the town. The first part of that process was to upgrade our emergency plan for the town. I'm pleased to say that that was upgraded. It was submitted to Mass Emergency Management, and it's a part of the record. I'm now working on all the databases of all the contact points and stuff in the community. That's going to take months, and it's going to be a living document, and it's a private document. Has a lot of private personal information on contacts and stuff. But one of the things I did was in October, I asked all the department heads to come in and others for just a quick introduction talk, and then I wanted to know how many of them have had emergency training in incident command. Now, if you go back to your emergency plan, you have a sign-off by the select board and others that they are part of that plan. But what I discovered was very few, except the public safety people, have ever taken the basic emergency incident command training. This is a couple hours on a computer, it's online, it's not difficult, but let me explain to you my feeling. If there's an emergency in town tonight, I'm the emergency manager, Ed basically is partnered up with me, and we move forward. The chairman of the Board of Selectmen is in the third seat.
Okay. I need to take a
And
test.
John Workman, that's part of his job description.
Yes. But then after that, we move into the rest of the board. So what I'd like the Board of Selectmen to do is authorize the town administrator to contact all the department heads, as well as the members of the Board of Selectmen, give them a web link so they can take this online course and just pass the certificates back to us. I don't care if it takes a couple of months, it's whenever somebody's got some free time. But I think we need to do this. And the other part to this is, if, heaven forbid, we have an actual emergency where there's a presidential declaration, and we have to take and file for reimbursement from the Commonwealth and the federal government, I don't want to be telling the federal government, yes, I had so-and-so doing this and this. No, they've never had basic training.
Okay.
And this is basically incident command. This basically makes you understand what the protocols are for management during an incident. It doesn't mean you put on a level A suit and we're having you take and deal with sarin gas and how to test for it. But John, if you want me to send you there.
Well, actually, I'm on the Emergency Operations Committee where I work, so
So you got it.
we go through
already have
these
it too.
tests.
Well,
From being on the Board of Health.
3 out of 5.
Yeah. So would you make that motion?
I move to authorize the town administrators to instruct the town department heads and to convince other committees and boards as so needed to take the incident command training level 1 or
So
100.
basically, he's going to send the link out with the urging that they take it within a reasonable, maybe.
A couple of months.
Okay, okay. Can we have a second? Okay, Francine seconded. Any discussion?
Do you need to have, as part of the emergency management plan, a list of people who have passed the basic level?
I already have a list of all the signatures of all the department heads that are part of the plan. So what if I have the certificate and I can attach it to the plan, it makes it look more appropriate that we've done our due diligence.
So part of the request from Ed would be that they send a copy of the certificate to him so he could
Just get it to me,
get it there. Okay,
and then he'll keep a master copy, I'll keep a copy, and we'll keep a copy with the town clerk.
okay. Any
So,
more
Yeah, Charlie, I have just a question. Back, was it 5 or 6 years ago when we had that Halloween storm, when the town was shut down for a while? If we had this in place then, would that have given us a better capture rate on the reimbursements from the feds?
That is my understanding, because of the fact that we had to borrow money to reimburse programs. Back then, the federal government was paying us 75%. So that 25% technically was supposed to be coming out of the town funding. But I went back on history with that, with MEMA, to try to figure out what had occurred. And without naming departments and stuff, remember, these people are not even working for the town anymore. There was a number of departments that never submitted any payrolls or expenses or anything like that. So it never went through the process.
That would have been big if we could have got.
It was like
How much?
I thought it was like $90,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 90 grand, so that would have been a,
It probably would have rolled down to being like 50 grand maybe. There, probably we could have recovered another 40 or so. But I'm not accusing anybody, no one knew. You have to remember that our emergency plan that I was dealing with was outdated by, what was it, 16 years? So
Okay, so let's.
that's why I volunteered to be the EMD, because in my prior life, I used to do these things.
In your current life also.
It's not to the crisis level of what it was when it used to be.
Okay, so any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Charlie.
By the way, I have no budget either.
Yes. Okay, any other necessary business that can't await the July 24th regular select board meeting? Does anybody have anything that can't wait? Okay. No personal change forms. Licenses, permits. Teresa Morris, 36 Valley View Road, one-day beer and wine, Conant Park, September 22nd, 2018 for party. I believe we have that here.
Point
I
of
think it's
order.
Valley Road, it's not Valley View.
Valley Road.
Just Valley Road, but not a big deal.
Not Valley View, okay.
Right.
Valley Road,
Where's Valley View
I
anyway?
don't know. And
It
let's,
does have a view.
let's do these one at a time. Can we have a motion to
So
grant
moved.
it? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ed, I'm going to assume because we have the actual certificates here, everything is in line, right?
For both of these, correct.
Okay. Next one is for Michael Guyette, 72 Gun Road, one-day beer and wine, Conant Park, August 11th, 2018 for picnic. Could we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Speaking of which, Conant Park, I don't know if people have gone, there's not many here, but at home, go to the Wednesday concerts that they have every so often. Was that the last one, the violinist, or is that the proper term? Fiddler. She was great. She was just fantastic, and I just put a sign out on the corner of my property because there's another one coming up. I forget who's there, but it was packed, yeah, tomorrow night. So if anybody wants to go to a good concert, I recommend that.
Just hear it from your house, or do you have to actually go there?
That's right.
I can't, but, you
Or your
know,
windows?
we have a sign that we put out every,
That's great.
yeah. Okay. Francine, you had some warrants that you signed?
Sure. Okay, number W 18-51 in the amount of $423,800.94.
803.
803. Okay, warrant P 18-52 in the amount of $287,119.99. P 18-52 LS in the amount of $138,452.24. Item PD 18-52A, $184,148.14. And item W 19-1 in the amount of $901,831.
I make a motion. Well, we have to approve those?
You
or
don't
just
have
reading
to,
the record?
she signed
Just
them
a
and
report.
everything.
Signed.
Just,
Reading the record,
reading
thank
into
you.
the record. Thank you. Okay, articles for special town meeting and special town meeting warrant discussion.
Just got a quick one.
Sure.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. I enjoy working with Ed, and I apologize to Ed, I didn't see this until I came here tonight and looked at the attachments, but I believe you might have interchanged the select board meeting time, 6 p.m., for the special town meeting, which has always been 7. Our annual, or our bylaws are for the annual are 7.
The bylaw for the annual is 7. There is no
Correct.
special
That
time
is true.
for a special.
We can't get into the school to 3:30 to set up. The Easthampton media had a problem last annual. It took them an extra hour. And I spoke with Janine earlier tonight, town clerk, and she said the workers would have to get there at 5:30, wouldn't be able to have dinner, leaving work at 4:30. So is there any reason we can't have a continuance at 7?
We don't have time to we'd have to give 2 weeks' notice, right? For a change?
You can do whatever you want. You originally voted 6 p.m. If you want to change it to 7 p.m. tonight, you can, because this won't be posted until Thursday, because we have to wait
Okay.
for CPC to vote tomorrow night.
And the voters always...
And Janine actually asked me to bring up the same thing.
Okay. So does anybody have an issue with changing it to 7?
And Janine was actually more worried about would it confuse people if doing it 6 instead of 7, because the annual's at 7.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that, or can we just change it?
Just make a motion.
Just make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I move that we change the special town meeting from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, first one is acquisition of property under town's right of refusal, 111 Glendale. You gonna lead that, Ed?
You want me to?
Sure.
And do you want me to read both drafts?
I don't know that we need to read this, because otherwise the meeting will go till
Well,
9,
let me do a summary.
if you would.
And there are 3 different options and 2 different warrants. So, for the sake of discussion, the chair asked me to develop 3 different possibilities for the board to discuss, as far as the possibility, different ways to fund the acquisition of 111 Glendale Road through the right of first refusal. The first article in both draft warrants is through, and the land grant that we're applying for is a reimbursement grant, so the town has to actually appropriate the entire amount for the acquisition. So the first option in both drafts is a combination of CPC funding, and the funding would be a combination of existing funds, and because of the fact that they don't have $785,000 in existing funds, a combination of the existing funds and borrowing against future revenues. And it's
Future community preservation revenues.
right. I should probably say community preservation surcharges rather than revenues. It is a drop-dead warrant article if we don't receive the grant, or at least receive $375,000 of grant funding. And it is conditional upon actually CPC being willing to make that money available for a town meeting vote and obtaining the grant. The borrowing piece against the future CPC surcharges, the article in both drafts, what it does is it allows, when and if the town were to receive the grant, for those grant funds to actually come back and replenish the CPC funding for the borrowing. So it would flow back into their funding rather than the general fund. The reason there are two drafts here, and I didn't think of it right away, but when KP Law put together the original drafts, Katie had left some blanks for me to fill in. She just said, you'll have to, fill in the specific account that CPC funding would come from. And I said, that's easy, undesignated fund. And then I started thinking about it, and roughly there's about $392,000 left by quick calculations in the undesignated fund. Yeah, $392,000. So they could do that. If the CPC were willing to authorize funding to go for town meeting, they could also say, well, we're going to give you X amount from the undesignated account and X amount from open space recreation. So there is one draft that says it comes from the undesignated fund. The second draft says it comes from a combination of both. If they do a combination of both, I have no way of knowing at this point in time what those specific numbers may be. They're basically X's in there now. If you want to go forward with these, I would ask that you give me your permission under your vote to go forward with that particular article, that you would allow me to fill in those blanks after tomorrow night's vote. You would still have to sign the warrant tonight, but you would give me the parameters to fill in the blanks if they took it from two different accounts.
As of the last CPC meeting, they did not have the exact balance left on the open space because of the amount of money had not been designated for the Labrie Field yet. What is the balance of the open space fund, do you know?
By the quick calculations that Vicki and I were looking at the other day, it's roughly $93,000.
Yeah, and Virginia kind of confirmed that last night at another meeting I was at.
Okay.
And that's one thing, when Vicki was here, she still has the Labrie Field in there, which I think is $675. Be nice if we could have some kind of notation somewhere on the fund saying this has been encumbered already for this project, because it is misleading when you see that in there. You think there's $1 million in there when there's not, or whatever the number is.
And also, she had said that there was going to be like $18,000 added into each of the accounts or something that had not also happened yet. So it was all a bit of a speculation.
Yeah, there was some money that came from the child care structures, if you will, at Norris. I think it was underspent by roughly $20,000. That money's still there, but they're thinking of putting a light pole up, so some of that may come from that. But it looks like some of it may come back.
Mm-hmm.
It may. It actually has to be officially given back to the CPCs, yeah, to be recorded.
And at the last town meeting where the Labrie Field was, whatever, $700 and some thousand, it was up to. Is anybody tracking to see if there's using all of that money, or is there some ways to economize it and more comes back?
They haven't started yet.
They haven't even broke ground yet, so.
Yeah, I think they're just getting some volunteers together to do some work, is what I heard last night.
So that's the first option in both drafts. The second option in both...
Before you go there, is there any questions on that?
I think we need to make a motion to authorize him to fill in the blanks.
We can do that, or we can look at the whole thing and...
Well, you might want to wait till number 28 and get into the actual special town meeting warrant to get there. But, so the second option under both drafts is, did the Board of Selectmen and with CPC's approval or of authorizing funds, want to look at a methodology of procuring 111 Glendale Road if we didn't get the grant. So option 2 in the 2 drafts is basically all from CPC funding, both currently in their accounts and future borrowing. And again, the difference in the 2 drafts is one has it all coming from undesignated. Draft number 2 has it coming from a split between undesignated and open space recreation.
What does CPC get in revenue or fees or whatever annually?
And we don't know where that's going to go in the future, but in round figures, maybe $300,000 entirely in a year.
Has community preservation taken anything into consideration about the Greenway and the possibility that that funding might go forward to purchase that? And then funding is going to be necessary to do design work?
Yeah, they have talked about it in the past, but I know from their point of view, it's if you don't have something in, it's really not being considered.
I understand that. I'm concerned about using them to borrow money to purchase land, and then 6 months from now, we're in a situation where we need money to take and do another project.
Yeah, for the first article, the money is borrowed very short term until the grant comes in. It's only borrowed if we get the grant.
Right, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. The second one is part from CPC and the rest from debt service.
Well, it's
No,
all from CPC.
All from
Oh, I'm sorry, all CPC on this one, yes.
Yeah.
Future money.
It's from future surcharges too. We have to borrow against them.
Right,
but,
yeah.
And the last one?
And option 3 was, okay, what occurred if CPC didn't want to go down the road of authorizing funds for option 2? And if the town still wanted to look at that, it would be a combination of CPC existing funding, say $385,000, and then the balance of $400,000 coming from a debt exclusion vote and ballot question, which goes straight to the taxpayers.
Right.
That would be a tough one to sell.
I'm not ready to stand in front of the taxpayers and ask for that.
Now, that could be done over 5, 10, 20 years, right?
It could. It's still going to
Right, it
end
would
up
spread out the cost, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
The other way it could be done is with a capital exclusion, one time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'll be a hit.
Well, that's what a debt exclusion is.
Well, she's talking one year.
She's
put it
doing
all
1
in.
year.
Oh, yeah, it could, yeah.
Take
yeah,
the hit.
Yeah, take the hit, yeah.
Now, can I just ask a question? I mean,
Sure.
we're in this, with the committee, the Open Space Committee. I like option 1. I have no problem with option 1. Option 2, future CPC money, I think I'm not really crazy about that. Has anybody contacted or sat down with the people selling to see if you can get like 85% of it for a reduced price if that grant doesn't go through, so we get something and we don't lose it all?
We were told that the opportunity to have a new purchase and sale is probably not an option.
It's off the table, yeah.
So,
That came from the attorney for the buyer and seller, that there's an existing purchase and sale under the right of first refusal, and the chance that that would be dissolved and we can renegotiate something new with the seller is not an option.
And one thing that's not showing up in here is that the seller, and hopefully it's still on the table, has offered to spread out payments over 2 years, 3 years maybe. So if we say we got option Article 1 passed, the grant would cover the first year, and then the CPC wouldn't need to kick in their side of it until year 2, or maybe 2 and 3.
yep, that option 1 looks great to me. I'm just not really crazy about option 2 and 3. I think going back to the town for another debt exclusion might be a very difficult, very, very difficult, I think.
Yeah.
So, that's why I thought for a different option 2 is that maybe you could sit down not with the seller, but with the buyer, which is Dave Garska, and say, look, Dave, how much do you need? How much can we get? And and work something with him, and maybe he would agree. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. Instead of losing it all, you know, you get something that way.
Yeah.
And we have so much money to spend, you know, so we can use our CPC money, the same money, we just wouldn't have the other grant, but maybe get the bulk of it. I don't know, just tossing that out there.
You want to go up here, Diana?
Just as an option too.
Right, I
if
think it
option
was
one
just
fails.
informal, but his lawyer, Kemp, who's also the lawyer for the sellers, said that he really had to retract his, initial discussion of possibly donating some land because he couldn't afford it, that it would be so expensive, I don't know, the whole project or whatever, that he couldn't risk that.
Well,
So
that's
it
why I was
seemed-
saying
Yeah.
not to have him donate it, but joint venture with him. We, come up with some money, maybe he would have a different view of that, that's all.
Maybe, but that indication was that he felt he needed to go for all the, profit he could get. That was the impression that I got from what his lawyer said.
I mean, and the other thought is, if we did that, and it's not a bad idea, is there would be a road through there, and there'd be a cul-de-sac, and, all that too.
It would just be, I guess, on the beginning end.
Right.
So, like I said, if option one is the best. If you can get the grant and the CPC happens to be funded and that works, that's great. If it doesn't, I'm looking for a backup plan, because I don't know, the other two may not be as, it's gonna be a hard sell, I think, on the other two.
I think there are complications with Chapter 61, too, to splitting it up. I don't really understand how that all works, but when...
Do that. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure you can split.
You're gonna have to get up here, Barb. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Make an accommodation.
Yeah, we need a mobile.
Barbara LaFlamme, 20 Cook Road. It's my understanding that community preservation funds would secure it as open space, but there would not be an option to use any part of the money to release any portion of the land for a use other than open space.
But I think what Jim's
But
talking
where I'm
about,
coming from
doing the
is-
opposite.
Right. The town's not gonna buy the entire parcel and release some. You're gonna have it surveyed into two pieces. Maybe 60 acres would go to the town, and the balance would go to Dave Garska. This is just a backup plan.
Yeah.
So the town would have their 60 acres, and the 20-something acres maybe Dave Garska could use. Also, Kestrel was here at one point, and they were talking about doing this. They said you can look at dividing it that way. That's why I was thinking about that and thought that might be a direction we could go for a backup plan.
I mean, actually, that would benefit both parties in some ways.
It seems to me that that would have been something that would have been presented a long time ago. I mean, we're already down to the road of, a public hearing next week and a town meeting coming up soon. I would have thought that if that was something that was interesting, I mean, obviously, it's clear to most people that there's a group of people that are at least trying to present to the town whether or not they want this land. I would find it hard to believe that there wasn't an attempt to, we actually had asked through John and through Amanda Kemp about whether or not we could have a conversation with the buyer and seller, and basically we were told what we were told. There's no change in the timeline and the purchase and sale.
And I've never seen...
Timeline meaning the 120 days.
We shouldn't say no change in the timeline, because they did say,
120 days.
right.
I didn't mean the closing.
Yeah, they're open to it, but they want to see what happens at the town meeting first.
And
Obviously, if the-
I just thought of this when I was reading these articles, and that came to my mind at this
Yeah.
time. I mean, this is a last-minute idea. I wish I came up with it sooner, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, it's also something we can talk with Mark from Kestrel, saying, could we still get the grant if we did that? Bought a smaller portion, could we use that 400,000? But like I said, let's go with this.
I have not seen the letter that went out to Amanda Kemp Zadonis, so I don't know what was outlined in that particular communication and what came back in response to that communication. So, you know, I'm kind of at a loss because I've never seen it.
A lot of the communication's done by telephone.
Well, that becomes a problem.
Well, it's documented, so, you know.
Is it possible, Mr. Gibson, to get that letter and the communication that went back and forth?
I can get you the letter that was sent by the town, yes.
That might be helpful.
Okay.
Guess that's all I can add at this point. I know we've talked about a number of scenarios, and we've kind of put our best foot forward as we could to try and get the support of the community and be absolutely open about what we're proposing.
Yeah, a lot of time and effort has been put in by a lot of people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My preference would be to present to the voters, if possible, via the Community Preservation Committee, an option where the best-case scenario would be funding it through the grant and CPC, and there would be a backup article where the town would be able to decide whether or not they wanted this piece of land, regardless of funding. So whatever is the best position we can put forward that the voters could vote on. Obviously, the best case would be the number one, where theoretically the money's there. We do have a very good chance for the grant, and we do know that there is funding currently up until the amount that we're requesting of community preservation. So what would be the second option, which we think would be, if that doesn't come through, what would be the best way to secure addition, and let the voters decide whether they want to put out the money for this property?
It would also, for the third version of this, that would have to go to elections, right? I mean, that's
Correct.
The override, so not only the town meeting would have to vote that one through, option 3.
Yeah.
It would have to go to
Special election.
an election. Probably, we have one coming up in
That's right, September.
I have a funny feeling, when you said that, it just dawned on me, there's a window as to when you can put that in for a special election, and I have a funny feeling we've walked past that date already. I'd have to check with the town clerk, but I think September 4th is too quick.
Yeah, I want to say it's closer to 60 days.
60 or something days, I think you missed that.
So,
May I suggest
Sure.
that the board vote on each?
Yep, that's what I was going to do now. Great minds, as they say.
I'm telling you, man.
So because there's discussion on all three of these, I was going to say, let's take them one at a time. And Article 1's going to be the easiest one. So can we have a motion to forward Article 1 on the warrant for the special town meeting July 26th?
And so can we be clear that this is asked for 790?
785.
785.
Yeah. It's going to be a combination of CPC and grant.
Combination of CPC and what?
Grant. Land grant.
Mm-hmm.
Also allowing Ed to fill in the amounts, I think.
Fill the
is what you
amounts
asked
once
for.
the CPC.
On the second group, and if CPC so chooses to split where the monies are coming from.
And kind of the white elephant in the room is the CPC tomorrow night needs to approve this.
Right.
Yeah, because if they don't,
Then, yeah. So,
no?
Mm-hmm.
would anybody like to make that motion?
I thought Maureen was,
Sure, I'll make a motion that we we put forth an article that is for $785,000, and that we authorize Ed to fill in the amounts based on, if it's approved by CPC, whether they want to have it be all from undesignated or partially open space and undesignated.
So
And
basically,
the grant, land grant of up to $400,000.
As Article 1.
that's Article
Article
1,
one.
right. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so discussion on this, we all comfortable?
Well,
or-
I'd just like to hear what Barbara had to say based on my remark. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Okay, let's go to Article 2. Would anybody like to make the motion to accept Article 2 as it's written? Or if not, then make any appropriate changes? Okay, seeing none, we'll pass over that. We go on to Article 3. Would anybody like to make a motion that we approve Article 3 to go on the warrant for the special town meeting as written or with any changes?
So basically, this article would be that we're requesting the total amount from, would it be again the combination of community preservation and borrowing, either by debt exclusion or capital exclusion?
Yeah, this is from the undesignated account for 385 and 400 with the borrowing debt exclusion. So this goes out and borrows money and then requires the town folks to pay it back.
Can I second it for discussion?
I don't think we have it first.
Oh, I thought you just made a motion.
No, we're just talking about it
I
now.
thought I did too, Jim.
Did you make one?
Yeah, that was,
Okay.
you were filling in the blanks, but yeah.
Okay.
That was a
So
motion.
a motion by Rini and second by Jim. So discussion?
Well, how does that work? Because if that has to go to town vote, that's not going to happen until next year sometime at the next annual, or are you going to have another
Have a
election?
special,
Another special town
Another
meeting.
special election?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
which isn't necessarily good.
I was,
It's future borrowing against CPC,
Yeah.
that's what,
which would require a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
so can we back up
Just
on?
don't take the top.
Well, let's do this one,
Okay.
and then we can back up, no
Okay.
problem. Yeah, and the other issue with this one is it's all coming from undesignated versus the ability to take it from open space and, or undesignated, which put us in a corner.
Right.
So
Why was that one presented or written that way, as opposed to both of them being, when you're asking for CPC, that we would be able to go with however CPC might divide it up? So this one is 100% undesignated.
I'm just gonna say an oversight, is that?
Everything in draft 1 is out of undesignated.
Okay.
Everything in draft number 2,
Yeah.
all 3 articles, is a combination of undesignated and open space recreation.
Okay,
It's just 2 different paths that I don't know which one they may follow.
okay.
So with that in mind, we've got a first, motion and a second on Article 3
Yeah,
with
and we were just,
undesignated, so do you want to retract the motion in the second and we'll move to the second version of Article 3? Or do you want to change that so that the CPC has some leeway where the funds would be approved out of?
when you say the second version?
Yeah, second version is where it allows
We're still
from,
on 3, Jim.
Am I on the second? Yeah, I think I'm on.
the second version of Article 3, which allows CPC funding out of undesignated and open space / recreation.
Yeah,
It's basically the same,
yep, okay.
it's their decision.
So,
I'll retract my second if you want to.
Okay.
retract
I'll
the first.
also propose that the actual CPC amount is a combination similar to number 1.
Okay, so version 2 of Article 3, which allows the CPC to choose from undesignated open space recreation account. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, and Jim, do you want to second that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so, discussion.
Yeah.
Does that eliminate us going to a debt exclusion, or
No,
No, that is a debt
that's still
exclusion.
That is a
contingent on a debt exclusion, which I don't really want to go in front of the
so
people.
I'm opposed to that too.
Yeah, I'm opposed
So-
to it, but I,
Barbara, if you want to,
go back to that
give you a name again, if you don't mind.
Sure. Barbara Lamb, 20 Cook Road. This is my first actual having this in my hand. Article 2 also has an option that the Select Board is authorized to acquire said property by gift negotiated purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise, which I assume is any legal method, including pursuant to the town's statutory right of first refusal for conservation and passive recreation, etc. So there's another option here which we haven't talked about at all, and that is...
We're going back to that after this one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I
No problem.
there's three solid...
A little late.
Yeah. So thank
That's
you.
number 2, you said? Article
That's number 2. It's E on number 2.
Okay.
The difference between them, I believe, is number 2, you're using future CPC money.
Right.
You're using both current and future.
Yeah.
Current and future.
But it's all CPC funds.
What's the rate of interest on future borrowing for CPC?
Depends on how long you do it. You know, I'm going to say could be, you know, if you do it for less than 10 years, I'm guessing it's probably going to be 3.5%, maybe 4 at the most.
Okay, so
We've never done, I don't believe CPC has ever done
No, they have not.
borrowing.
They have not.
I think that might be a hard sell with that committee. But
The other thought that I have is, I'd like to think that the select board would give community preservation the option to decide how they feel about it, because they have a real interest in this, and I wouldn't want to diminish their options. I think this is good that there are multiple options, but I'd like to have them have the opportunity to weigh in on
that's
it.
a great thought. Now, their meeting is tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
So why can't the 17th meeting, we go through this? Is that
Because
too
it's got to
late?
be signed tonight. It's got to be posted Thursday for the 2-week notification.
All the articles then have to be pending CPC approval, then, right?
Yeah, and we're going tomorrow night to explain it, and Virginia's been involved with it ongoing. We've met with them before a couple of times.
Yeah.
Just so that they haven't been left out of the process. They may have a different position.
They have been. I think there's going to be some robust discussion tomorrow night.
I agree with you.
So we're on Article 3, Version 2, and that's the debt exclusion. Okay, so that's the debt.
I'm not putting it forward.
That's fine. So we have this article.
We could.
Yeah, we have this article
No,
now
it's
with
going to be
a
posted Thursday, so no.
a motion and a second that we need to vote on. This is the one with the debt exclusion for 400,000 and CPC for the other 385. So if there's no more discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it fails 3-1. So let's go.
4-1, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't vote, but yes.
Oh, I thought I heard you vote.
No.
You don't vote?
You must have been moaning or
I,
something.
Was it a moan?
I vote not to put it there because of the debt exclusion. So let's go back to Article 2, where there's some promise.
Yeah, I would,
And let's go on Article 2, Version 2, which has the ability for CPC to take the funding from various sources, so we don't confuse that.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 2, where the Community Preservation Committee determines the exact amount of the funds for the 385,000, be it undesignated or open space, and that we borrow against future CPC funds for the 400,000.
and I'll second that.
Okay, so discussion. Anybody want to, have any issues with that, or
I have an issue
concerns?
with it. I find that it's a poor business practice. We have other projects that are coming to light in the next couple of years that I think CP money would be available for, and I'm afraid we're gonna put that at jeopardy.
But I guess if we could extend the loan over a period of time, we wouldn't be taking 100% of the new revenue coming into the CPC, so there would be the ability for them to build up some other reserves that could go to fund other projects. So we wouldn't be wiping them out totally, but it does create an option in the event that we don't get the grant.
I guess the question becomes the cost benefit of securing 80 acres when we already have 600 acres that the community preservation, what do you call it? Conservation Commission is operating under. I don't see it as a major benefit having that 80 acres if it's just going to be open space land when we already have 600 acres.
Yeah, but I consider, the impact of this particular piece of property in the way it is, if it's developed versus if it's not developed. And I don't think the intention is to just accumulate property. I think it's to preserve a particular environment in that particular location and what it represents to, the water. It's not a watershed, but
Water
what was
recharging
described.
area.
Yes, a charging area, and I think the natural environment.
Let's go up there.
Do you really want to keep this open to the public?
Yeah, I think it's important enough, Donna. Go ahead. Tammy, I said Donna. The reason I said that is I have a sister Donna and a sister Tammy. Sorry.
I don't know what he's thinking.
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. When property is put forth to the Water Commission for their approval, if it's a watershed area and stuff, then people can't walk on that area. So the
No, that's
front
not
of
true.
that,
No, they can.
okay?
They can.
Okay,
So basically, what we're doing is we're setting up articles where we're asking for community preservation funding plus a grant. And without approving this, we have no backup plan. I would like to know if the voters of this town would like this parcel. Charlie, I'm not, no offense, but the bike trail was being discussed when my son was in elementary school. He's now 32 years old. I think we have this in front of us. We have a right of first refusal. I would like the voters to decide whether or not getting this piece of land, given all the other issues that came up with these 3 parcels being bought up right away. There's been a lot of interest. 175 people came to an open space meeting at Norris School. I would like the voters to decide, and I would like to give them an option besides a grant as a way of purchasing. If they approve number 1 and they don't approve number 2, then we know that they only want to spend under $400,000 for it. I would like to give them another option so that if they felt strongly about purchasing it, then they would have another option than just the grant.
And I think, and Barbara brought it up when she was at the podium, let's see, those E and C, that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Maybe-
Oh, yes.
Looks
I
like
see that.
E, where
Yeah,
the
the
board's
typo
authorized
there.
to
Ed.
acquire the property by gift, negotiated purchase, eminent domain.
C
So
and D.
that gives us some wiggle room, I think, at that point, maybe even bring in Jim's idea.
It's in there because it's standard boilerplate language.
Okay, so that'll be corrected.
And that's number 2?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 2E, before C, except after Y or something, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on this before we vote? Okay, so this is to accept Article 2, Version 2, that has the CPC allowing it to take from different funds as they see fit. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Well, this is where I got to put my personal opinion aside and look what I think I should do from the select board. And I agree with Rainey that even if I vote for it or not, I'm not sure. Let's let the townspeople decide if they want to vote for it. Give it to the town and discuss it and see where it settles out. So I would vote for it.
The other
So it's a
option,
3-2 vote. I'm sorry, go ahead.
the other informational meeting coming up will be July 17th. There'll be a public hearing
Mm-hmm.
And so there will be opportunities for people to come and voice their concern or their expression, whatever.
Point of order,
Yes, sir.
because they cannot hear her without a microphone, do you want to repeat what she...
Yeah, I was
Barbara,
going
you
to...
don't get up.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just let him repeat it
Yeah.
so that it gets out there.
Yeah, there is a card here that's going to be distributed at many locations. I don't know if we can get a view or not. But it's Opportunity to Save the Land, public hearing July 17th. This says 6 p.m. Town Hall, special town meeting 7 p.m. Norris School, and it lists why preserve the land in question. So it's going to be handed out. Francine, do you know what the distribution is going to be for this?
I think Rini might know. I know it's going to be the transfer station is one location. I don't know about anything else.
On Saturday.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
not being
Wednesday
mailed
and
out.
Saturday.
It's being given out at the
Handed out,
transfer
right.
station and then,
Library.
right, bulletin board, yeah.
Okay. So it'll be out there. If anybody wants a copy, they can get a hold of on the hall. Okay, good. So we'll let the voters decide which way they want to go on that.
Ed,
Thank you. Go ahead.
Ed wants to be recognized.
Ed?
More
Just a general observation. You just voted on option 2, draft 2. To me, it would make perfect sense, and I don't know why you didn't combine them, but to do the same for option 2, draft 1. It's the same exact wording, it's the same exact principle, except if this gives the CPC the opportunity, if they wanted to take it all out of the undesignated, which recharges faster because it's 70% of the surcharges,
But the way it's...
versus the split.
But the way it is now, they could say we want to split it 0 from here and 100% from here. They can still do that. It's up to them. It just gives them the option if they want.
Please approve
Okay.
the first draft also. It's going to make it much easier for me to plug this so that they're both signed.
So you want it to say they can split it or they can take it from one?
Same thing you did with Article 1.
But
You
we don't
approved
want-
both drafts.
Right, so are you saying you want 4 articles at the town meeting? Draft 1, draft 2, Article 1 and 2?
How
We
can
we don't want 4 articles.
Post both.
He's not.
I'm not going to.
Until after CPC.
Exactly.
I see what he's doing.
Okay, so explain it to me then. Because what you just said to me anyway, it seems like you wanted 4.
Yeah, we're exactly right. 4, and then after CPC meeting tomorrow night, it gets narrowed down to 2,
It gets-
depending on how they handle it.
Or it could get narrowed, if they don't,
You can narrow it down to 1 if they don't.
right, they could say, yeah, we're going to fund, through the first option.
Okay,
And we're not going to fund the second, it's down to 1.
okay.
But at least if you do both, it gives them the option to do both. I can then fill in the gaps.
So in that case, we need a motion to accept Article 1, Version 1, and Article 2, Version 1, and the ability for Ed to remove the ones that CPC doesn't approve funding for. Is that accurate?
Well, I believe you did Article 1, the motion encompass both drafts.
Right, we did.
It's just the second one.
Yeah, it's just the second one.
It's the second one. You just gotta do the 2
Yeah.
of them. Draft 1, draft 2, option.
Okay.
So you've done, basically, you've authorized Article 2, Draft 2 to go forward by a 3-2 vote. Would suggest you do a motion for Article 2, Draft 1.
Okay.
So you just want a motion for Article 2, Draft 1.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
That
With
is very
The
accurate.
ability to be able to take the ones that don't get approved at CPC tomorrow night off of the warrant. Okay, I think that's clear as we're going to get. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I move that we approve
Yeah, just what I said.
Article 2 from Version 1 for the purchase of the property at 111 Glendale Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? And Ed's also going to have the ability, like we said, to take off the ones that don't get approved by the PCP. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Will you have this available for community preservation tomorrow?
I won't have it available until after community preservation tomorrow, because I have to fill in the blanks. And then it gets posted on Thursday by the constable.
I'm sorry, I just came up with that idea.
So we have 2 in favor of that and 2 opposed.
Okay,
So,
so Charlie and Jim?
or
Sorry.
opposed, yeah.
Things are moving pretty
Yeah.
quick here, thank you.
And I personally think, like I said before, with the option we already have there, with the ability to put it wherever they want, I think that's fine, so I'm gonna say no. So that one didn't pass.
This is getting more confusing by the minute.
Well, that's why I think be down to 2 of them makes more sense, but, again, opinions are always good. Okay. Transfer of funds from receipts reserved from appropriation for PEG access to pay Easthampton Media. Now, that's just a transfer, Ed,
This
correct?
is routine.
Yeah. Just from one account to the
Ed
other.
wants to speak.
Yes, sir. Got to make noise sometimes, sorry.
That's quite all right. I need a clarification from your previous statement. If the CPC tomorrow night said, yes, we will fund this entirely out of CPC funds, current and future, but we're going to do that from the undesignated account.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Well, here's where I want the clarification. From what you said before, could that warrant article be filled in, since you've approved draft 2 of Article 2, as $385,000 from undesignated funds and $0 from the open space recreation?
My opinion
Account.
is yes. That's why I voted that way. It doesn't require you to take from one account or the other. It just gives them the option of where it's coming from. Yeah. Yes, sir.
There is a built-in,
Well, no, I just want the clarification, because if they came back with that vote, and I didn't put anything in for it, I don't want to hear from this board afterwards that, oh, well, our intent was if they did that, fill in draft 2, for the 385 and 0.
Yes,
if
sir.
the town moderator's listening, I believe there's a built-in safety system in this where motions can be made on the floor of town meeting to modify if we feel there's an issue. If it's in writing and he's so inclined to accept it.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. There is wiggle room. The intent is for CPC to contribute so much funds. There's wiggle room as to what account. It'd be better if they vote and the like, but the people are been warned that so much monies would be appropriated from CPC. Exactly what percentage and what account, that can be determined on the town meeting floor.
Good. Thank you. Does that clarify otherwise a muddy
Yeah, absolutely.
situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice to have you here. Okay, so the transfer of funds, receipts reserved from appropriation for PEG access to pay Easthampton Media. It's a routine transfer. Can we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
John, can I just ask a question about that?
Sure.
Somebody had mentioned to me that, and Charlie, maybe you know about this, we were promised a projector for...
Yes, and we lost the director in that program,
Right.
and then I stepped down as chair,
Mm-hmm.
so I haven't been spearheading it.
Mhm.
But the idea was to upgrade the equipment in here,
Mm-hmm.
but we're sort of watching Easthampton Cable reconnect itself
Mm-hmm.
so that we can find out who's going to be the administrator,
Mm-hmm.
so we can start lobbying, because we have the money to do it.
Right.
It's just getting them going. Robert is on their board of directors. And if Robert could connect with the town administrator, I think you guys could sort of work out what needs to happen. If you need me in the meantime, just give me a yell.
Something better. Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. Jim Zarvis, the chair of the board of directors, wants to be on the agenda to address all of you next Tuesday. He couldn't make it tonight, but he would like to bring you up to date at the station's progress.
Is this news to you too, Ed?
What's that?
Is this news to you too?
Yes.
Okay, so can you put them on the agenda?
You're going to allow other things other than the public hearing on the agenda next week?
Can't be next week.
That's right, too.
The next regular.
24th?
After that, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
24th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I think the issue too is that when things are projected, the public can't see it. And like I said, there will be some information projected next week. And so people will realize that it's very difficult to see from home when there's things projected there. So I just want to make sure it stays on the front burner somewhere, because I did hear that we would do the new projector.
Okay, Charlie?
It's my understanding that this was supposed to be pre-wired so that when you connected your laptop to that projector, it put a live feed onto the broadcast side so that you didn't utilize the antique cameras to pick up off the screen. I don't know if that actually occurred, but that was the plan.
There's also a connection right there, hardwired, that takes a PC.
Yeah, but whether it goes to the camera or not, we don't know.
The idea was to have that slaved on the inside, so when you took it off your laptop, it went through a direct feed into the camera system.
Okay.
Because part of the problem is even though you increase the lux power on that,
Hard to see.
you're dealing with hand-me-down cameras in here. So you're better off having a direct feed. But Bob's far more articulate in this field than I am.
Robert, I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention. On the concept of the hand-me-down cameras, this is something James Zarvis will present, and which the clue or the concept is there's going to be better equipment in the future, and they're even thinking of mics and cameras that will automatically go to whoever is speaking, and
So he's going to bring that
he's going to
information?
bring all that up.
Okay, so why don't we wait for 2 meetings from now, have him explain everything. If we have questions, we can ask him then. Okay, good. Okay, approval to allow the select board to enter a 5-year lease contract for communications, dispatch radio equipment at the police station, dispatch for police, fire, ambulance, and highway. If my memory's correct, they can't enter into a 5-year lease without Board of Selectmen
Right.
approval.
No, town
So
meeting
moved.
approval. This goes to town meeting, that's all. Town meeting has
Yeah,
to
it's an
approve it.
article, yes.
And I'll also move that.
Okay, second?
Second.
Transfer of pay.
Okay.
Did you get that, Kathy? Jim?
I'm trying to find out if you actually voted on Article 4.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did vote on the,
Well, Article 4, which is now going to be Article 3.
Don't even go there right now.
Okay, see, I didn't know that was an article, because I don't have a copy. That's the same in both versions.
And,
It's in your packet.
It's a
okay,
work in progress.
let's go, let's go
Yeah.
one at a time here, yeah.
There's a chair in this thing.
Let's go.
Then I'm slipping.
No wonder why I'm confused.
Yeah.
So Article 5, the 5-year lease article.
Yep.
I made a motion, and I think Rini seconded.
yeah, I seconded it.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that those were.
Yeah, they're articles.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I just want to know about it. Is there a maximum dollar amount of the cost of this lease?
It's a lease agreement, and the lease
We
is
will
already
have to go,
spelled out.
yeah.
I
well, that's-
I know that, but I mean, did we budget for it? I mean, do we have any idea?
We will, this came up after the budget was put together. We found out that the current equipment is failing. I can't tell you if it's going to last another 6 weeks or if it's going to last another 2 years. Therefore, the lease methodology, currently we get $18,000 from an E9-111 grant. The estimate is that this would be about $13,000 a year, so the chief would use the E9-111 grant, and he is also going to put in for additional funds for the E9-11 grant. So that's how it would be paid for.
I think we talked about the last
Thank you.
meeting, I believe.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, other documents requiring signatures, special town meeting warrant.
Need this signed or something?
Yes, now, may I make a suggestion that you take like a 5-minute recess, because I now have to go make all these edits to these 2 documents and bring you back something that you can sign, even though it's going to get edited again
Well,
probably tomorrow night, so.
We can continue on, right?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
You can continue on, but, yeah.
Anybody need a recess now, or we can wait?
Can't wait too long.
We'll
Any nice coffee or
We'll
something?
take a recess before the executive session, so.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. We're just about done.
Okay.
Okay, let's stay on track. Minutes to approve, none.
Done.
Calendar announcements, selectmen, I should say select board meetings, July 17th, which is a public hearing, first right of refusal, and July 24th. Special town meeting, July 26th.
Yep.
Yeah, because the caucus is that night.
Yeah.
Watch it, Robert's coming.
On the calendar, Robert?
On the calendar.
Okay.
Town moderator, special town meeting information session, Thursday, July 19th, 7 o'clock, right here, a week from this Thursday,
What time again, you said?
7 o'clock.
And those are pretty well attended, and they're
The
recorded.
listening audience. They send representatives, 1 per 100 in town.
Last time, I think there was an issue with the trans.
There was, but we believe, the Easthampton Media believes they've worked out all the kinks from the equipment that exists for now. But anyway, that's a week, this Thursday, 7 o'clock.
Hopefully there's a good
So I'll
show.
give a preview of the special town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Very
thank you.
good.
Okay, now we're gonna go open time for the public. Is there any public
Well,
out there?
Can I just, while we're calendar announcements, when's August meeting going to be? Because I'm not going to be around a certain week. I just didn't know if we could schedule that now.
What did you say, Jim?
August.
August meetings.
I think it's just wanted to talk about that, if you have a second.
Okay.
So if we stay with the every 2 weeks, which actually has
Yeah.
been weekly up till now.
Week of the 6th, I'm not here, so.
It would be the 7th, and I'm not here the following week. So if we just stay with every 2 weeks, it would be the 7th, and then
That's fine.
I've got this-
21st.
That's what I have already,
Okay.
and then the 4th for the,
So are we gonna be meeting at 4 in the afternoon?
When,
which,
on the primary day?
August 7th?
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
Well, I thought you'd like a different change.
No,
No,
I'm
6
good at
o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on the 7th and 6 o'clock, but we should probably talk about the September one, just because it is primary day. We're not going to be able to have it then.
And I'm not going to be here on the 21st,
Okay,
and I'm not going to be here for the 17th either.
okay. Wait,
First, 17th meeting next week?
Right.
yeah, well, let's keep them on, as long as we have a quorum, and hopefully, and we can always cancel a meeting if we don't have any agenda items, but that never happens.
We always find them.
We don't have to go look far for that.
So do you want to look in September, is that what you're saying, Reedy?
Should we just meet on the 5th or 6th?
No problem.
I mean, that's election day, and I think election is 8 to 8 that day.
Yeah, because it's a primary.
So you want to do it on the 5th?
Really?
Oh, we're here
7
anyway.
a.m.?
7 to 8, 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. on primary day.
I have a planning board meeting on the 5th, so I have to pick one, I guess. So that's all.
What'd you say, Jim?
On the 5th, the Wednesday is the planning board meeting, first and the
Okay.
third Wednesdays, that's why it's
So
out.
what do we want to do with that, the 4th
I have
meeting?
no problem with election. I mean, we're in this room.
Yeah.
We did it last
Doesn't matter?
election.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
fine
it
with it
wasn't-
too. Let's keep,
Okay,
let's
I
keep
thought
it.
I thought we couldn't.
Okay,
No,
so
we can.
we have the 4th, we have the 18th, and then we have going into October after that. So September
Okay.
is the 4th and the 18th,
That's good.
okay?
Perfect.
4th and 18th. Okay, I'm sorry. Tammy, would you like to come up for?
Tammy Rolundis, 298 College Highway. I actually have 2 items. When you were talking about the Glendale Road extension piece.
Gun Road extension?
Gun Road extension, excuse me, Gun Road. do you, Ed's not here. Kristen Smitty at HRHS put in speed bumps. And I know Smith College put in a speed table, and that slows people down extremely well.
The question is that a private road? Or
I don't know, because everybody cuts through there.
I understand that, but I think it's a private road.
Okay.
The other
So that
part to
probably
this-
Hampshire Regional would be private property then?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can pass along to Ed and they can.
Because
look.
there's one on Florence Road going in.
Yeah, I know, I can't explain that. I had a long conversation with Randall about the whole sign thing.
Yeah.
And I also had a conversation with Mike, only because we were talking about other stuff. And there's federal regulations requiring different things for speeding and different types of traffic suppression. And then there's state standards also.
Mhm.
Both of these individuals are trying to
Look through all that.
work through all that, get the answers. They need to talk to other resources and that, and see where they can come up with. So it's certainly being looked at.
Okay.
I mean, they're asking me about stuff because on the MPO board, I provided the information on all the accident histories in this town. You know, but they don't say why the accident, they just say that there was this kind of an accident.
All right.
So,
The next question is for a special town meeting, being the 26th, and with vacations, is there, do you need to have a required number in attendance?
yes, we just voted 50 people to be.
Did that go
That
through
been
the
approved by
AG
the
and everything?
originally?
Yeah, I thought so.
Well, if it hasn't, then it's 25.
Right. Either 25 or 50.
25
depending.
or 50, depending on whether it's been approved.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Anybody else for open time for the public? Okay, we're going to go into executive session under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to
Point
collective.
of order. I would recommend that you go into recess because we still have to sign the documents.
We have to sign the warrant first. Ed will be back, so we can't go in there yet.
So I would not go into executive session now.
Well, we could come out to do it, but back in open session.
Well, I'm leaving.
So we will take a 5-minute recess at the behest of Mr. Kanicki.
I'm just telling you.